All right, let's talk about a dangerous illusion that sits right at the heart of modern marketing. We're going to spend the next few minutes uncovering why those dashboards you trust, the ones you check every day, might actually be leading your brand toward total invisibility, and what the world's most memorable brands see that pretty much everyone else misses.
So let's just dive right into the central mystery here. It's the question that honestly keeps founders and CMOs up at night. You're looking at your dashboard, right? Everything's green. Clicks are up, your cost per acquisition is down, engagement is through the roof. I mean, by all accounts, you're winning. But then, nothing. The brand just stagnates. It fails to grow. So what is going on? Well, the problem actually starts with the very tool we use to see the market in the first place, our dashboards. They're not a clear window. It's probably more accurate to think of them like a funhouse mirror. They reflect a version of reality, sure, but it's warped, it's oversimplified, and it's distorted in ways that are, well, they're dangerously misleading. And this is where you really see the gap. On one side, you've got this neat, orderly world of the dashboard. Clicks, impressions, conversion rates. Everything's measurable. It feels like it's under our control. But then on the other side, that's the messy, unpredictable world where customers actually live. A world that's driven by memory, by random conversations, and just complex human emotions. All the things that never, ever show up in a report.
And this disconnect, it's not an accident. It consistently shows up in three deceptive signals. Think of them as cracks in the code of modern marketing that trick us into believing the illusion. So let's break them down, one by one.
So, the first signal is by far the most common. Most of the metrics we track are really just vanity metrics. Here's the thing. They aren't designed to reveal the truth. They're designed to make us feel like we're making progress. Likes, shares, clicks, they're easy to count, and they're pretty easy to improve. So they give us this steady hit of false confidence.
And this really illustrates the trap perfectly. We pour enormous effort into optimizing for things like click-through rates because they're visible and, let's be honest, they're satisfying to track. But the real impact on the business? It's tiny. Meanwhile, that really high-impact work of building a memorable brand, well, that gets far less effort, precisely because its effects are so much harder to see on a dashboard.
Okay, now for the second signal, our deep-seated need to believe we're in control. We use these attribution models that promise to show us exactly which ad or which touchpoint caused a sale. But what they're really showing us is just a convenient story. They're mistaking the final, measurable click for the entire complex journey that came before it.
As thinkers like Nassim Taleb point out, in any complex system, and a customer's mind is probably the ultimate complex system, there are just countless hidden causes and random events at play. The idea that we can neatly assign all the credit to the last click is, frankly, a fiction. It's a story we invent after the fact to make a chaotic process feel orderly and controllable.
So the crucial point is this. We almost never truly know the specific trigger for a sale. Was it the ad they just saw? Or maybe a conversation they had 6 months ago? Or a memory from their childhood? Who knows? The platforms, of course, have a massive vested interest in pretending they know. Their attribution models are literally built to take credit, which ensures we keep spending money with them.
And this brings us to the third and maybe the most dangerous signal. The data we rely on the most, revenue, sales, conversions, these are all lagging indicators. They are reports on the past. By the time they tell you something is wrong, the damage has already been done.
Think about this timeline. A customer first forms an opinion about your brand. A competitor quietly shifts the market. These are the critical, invisible events that are actually going to determine your future success. But our dashboards, they only show us the final outcome, the revenue data, which arrives much, much later. We're essentially trying to drive by looking only in the rearview mirror.
So why do these flawed signals stick around? Well, it's because they're the foundation of a massive global industry. There is an entire economy built around this game of visible numbers, and it's fueled by algorithms, by media, and by our own competitive instincts.
I mean, just look at this number. This represents the global spend on digital advertising. We are talking about an ecosystem that's worth over $500 billion a year, all built on selling the illusion of predictability. It sells dashboards that promise clarity, even when they're reflecting a completely distorted reality. It's a game where the platforms and the agencies profit from the illusion, while the brands themselves risk fading away.
So what is the real cost for the brands who get caught in this game? What actually happens when you spend all your time chasing these digital ghosts on your dashboard?
The ultimate cost isn't just wasted money. It's actually far, far worse. By relentlessly optimizing for short-term, visible metrics, brands completely fail to build the one asset that guarantees long-term survival,
a presence in the customer's mind. You get really efficient at getting clicks, but you become completely forgettable. You become invisible.
And this leads us to what might be the most important metric of all, what the researcher Byron Sharp calls mental availability. It's actually a really simple idea. When a customer needs what you sell, is your brand the one that instinctively comes to mind? Just think about it for a second. When you need a coffee, what brand pops into your head first? That is mental availability. It has nothing to do with clicks. It's about occupying a tiny but incredibly valuable piece of real estate in your customer's memory.
So if that's the trap, how do the winning brands manage to avoid it? Well, they operate on a completely different philosophy. They've learned to ignore the noise from the dashboard and instead focus on the signals that actually predict growth, and that is their edge.
Yeah, they just focus on a totally different set of questions. So instead of asking how many people clicked, they're asking how many people will remember us next week. They don't just launch campaigns, they build systems that create word of mouth. They listen for those quiet, qualitative signals, the whispers in online communities that actually predict future demand. And most importantly, they see brand not as some line item expense, but as their single most powerful engine for growth.
So to bring this all together, we're really left with a need to recalibrate our own compass. And to do that, I'm just going to leave you with 3 sharp questions to ask yourself and your team. First one, take a really honest look at your dashboard. Which numbers get all the attention in your meetings? Which metrics are you worshiping that might just be a total distraction from the real work of building a brand?
And number 2, if you could just ignore what's easy to measure, what's that invisible signal that would truly tell you if you're on the right track? Is it unsolicited praise from customers? Is it the specific language they use to describe you? What actually predicts future growth for your business?
And finally, maybe the most critical question of all. Look at your reports. What crucial piece of information are you only learning about after the fact? What are you measuring so late that by the time you actually see it, the game has already been decided?